Today is the first day of the June 1986 retreat. There are two announcements. If people would like to be here in the early morning between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, but do not hear the bell, maybe one can write to a person with whom one shares a room, please wake me up. The occasion may be that one's group is going to be up for meetings or whatever. The other thing is about walking. There's no requirement to do the walking. And we now have the deck, which unfortunately because of meeting time cannot be used during that time, but without needing shoes one can step out of the room, out of the solarium and walk on the deck, or just look at the trees and hills, the sky. Always at the beginning of a retreat we talk about listening to a talk, which applies to all listening, not just to a talk. In order to be able to listen freely, please find the most comfortable chair, cushion, arrangement, or posture, so that there is a minimum of discomfort and pain, which may easily distract from listening or absorb energies which are not there for listening. There are some people here who weren't here last night. If a chair is brought in, please, a chair with 4 legs. Most chairs have 4 legs. To use the carpet strips in the cushion storage room. Benches don't need that. They can be put on the mat, benches or the balance chair. If the posture or position becomes uncomfortable during the talk, can one change it very quietly? Being aware of the movements involved. That will take care of the quietness, of the noise. Awareness takes care of it. Because there's also awareness that everybody else is quietly listening. And with that awareness does come the consideration for others. Not that one makes no sounds. We do make sounds when we move. And if one sits next to somebody who does change his or her posture, can that listening be broad, open, free from reaction? We don't know. We may react instantly. Why does he have to move? He is interrupting my attention. These are reactions that come up faster than the intention not to react. And the attention not to react is also not awareness. It's another train of thought, coupled with willpower. So, if someone is rustling around, can there be nothing added to it in terms of one's own inner rustling around? How does one listen to a talk like this? Particularly if one has heard many talks like this in the past. One may not have, then, well, this, what we're talking about applies to all of us. If one has heard a talk many times, so easily, there is the pattern, the memory. I've heard this, and anticipating almost what is going to be said and being involved in that. I know what she's going to say. Oh, this time she put it a little bit differently. This is involvement of the memory and judgments. It is a very narrow listening, which comes and is under the influence of memory and judgment. Or if one hasn't heard a talk before, isn't one ever so ready to compare what is said to what one has accepted in the past or rejected? Is there something in the mind that wants to grab onto the words or reject them? Which is also thought, and the feelings that go with thought. Or can one listen in an openness and innocency? I don't know, one has to try it out. Allowing all the space and not just in this room, not just in this valley. Not just to hear what is said, and not just to hear all the other sounds, the birds, the cat, the wind, and the trees. But to see for oneself whether what is said and talked about is actually so, or can be noticed within oneself right at this instant, or maybe at some very unexpected time. A talk here is not given to put forth a teaching that is to be learned, stored, used in the future to apply. It is something shared and worked upon this instant. Worked upon meaning listening without reaction, without knowing, and therefore open to see, to observe, to attend, whatever the word may be. The word is not the doing of it or the happening of it. Of this openness that moves along with whatever is said. Not agrees, it's not agreement. Moving along is not agreeing. As a matter of fact, if something sounds off, not right, confusing, contrary to what one feels is so, please, if you do remember it, write it down on a piece of paper afterwards and bring it to a meeting, and we will start all over again. We may not start from where we are now. We may not, neither of us may remember precisely what was said, but that doesn't matter. We don't need the words of now to discuss something later. All we need is listening and attending and wondering, questioning together and looking. And it's not tied to any place or time or person. One thing to keep in mind too in listening to a talk, very often a question is asked: is it possible to listen in all openness? Free from reaction. And then the brain is so conditioned to make out of this question or this tentative statement the idea of a commandment or an instruction. I should sit with an open mind. I should not react, she says so. If one attributes any kind of authority to the person one is listening to, then this happens that much easier. Of course, the moment we say I should be open, there is no openness. There's just this conditioned momentum of what I should be doing and the reaction and resistance to it all, wanting to comply in order to be good and accepted and approved of. Or the feeling of discouragement, dejection if one finds one cannot do what one thinks one is supposed to do, the depression that follows from it. Or the comparison with others who seem to be so better in doing what they're supposed to do in comparison to me, who is unable to be open, is caught up in reaction. And it all started with no awareness of how the brain changes, turns around, or misreads what is being said, taking what is a question or something to try out for oneself, or to look into for oneself for what I should be doing. We do it all the time. Can one become aware of that? And question all the shoulds that come up from moment to moment, and see how they stand in the way, block out to see what's actually there. The reaction, for instance, not I shouldn't react, but to see the reaction in its fullness. The resistance to come upon it, to meet it, to be that in its fullness. Not I shouldn't resist. That's another resistance. But what is it? Wondering, and then if the wondering is genuine, then doesn't one have to listen to what one calls resistance and withdraw the word? Because the word is already a reaction. What is this feeling, and what does it go with? How did it arise? Did it arise instantly with, I must do something? Not trying to overcome. That's again a resistance. But just this open, wide, spacious. What is it? And a gentleness of listening or observing. Somebody asked, you talked about having motives for coming here, having a motive for sitting. And in questioning this for myself, looking at it, I realize I do have all kinds of motives. There it came too obviously. The person said, I shouldn't have a motive in coming here. That is not what was said. But here one is, I shouldn't have a motive, so what am I sitting for if I have no motive? Motive to get something out of my sitting, like a calmer mind, peace of mind. Just the savoring of this incredible stillness of the countryside. Songs of the birds. The air and the breeze. Or having heard it's good for a person to sit, and if one just sits long enough, the mind will clear and maybe eventually come to enlightenment. Is there anything wrong with sitting down and these motives being there? They're there. So why say they're wrong? They're there. Can one discover them? See them clearly. They're thoughts that go through the mind, or a soliloquy, talking to oneself. And in the listening, one can hear what one says to oneself or about oneself. That's the motive. It's not an abstract psychological term, but something to be observed, listened to in one's inner workings, thoughts and talks. Also to notice how, or think about, we're doing this right now, how everything we do in our daily life, almost everything, maybe not everything, but almost everything we do for the sake of something else. For the sake of what will accrue to us because we're doing this. Maybe money, or just goodwill from another. We're doing it so somebody else will look favorably upon us. That other person may not exist, it may be in our mind. This is this whole system of merits, to do things to gain merits in heaven or in the next life, for the good works we do. To put oneself through something because it's good for me. I will get healthier, more wholesome, free, a better person. If I do this, then in the future I will be a better person. Or we do things because if we don't do them we will be scolded or fired at the job if we don't put in a certain amount of work and a certain quality of work, then we won't hold the job. Or we work because if we don't work we feel restless, anxious, panicky. So we work in order to calm down those states, in order not to feel lonely or useless or worthless. Working will bring us this feeling of some purpose and cover over this inner hole of emptiness. So the question we started out with was, what am I sitting for if there is no motive of it? If I have no motive, we went into this, there is a motive. And to say if I shouldn't have a motive, who says one shouldn't have a motive? No one says that. But let's say the motive is looked into, discovered, and it doesn't hold. It sounds too selfish. Selfish. There's the other idea, I shouldn't have any selfishness in my action. And yet, if one looks so sensitively and and discerningly at what one does from moment to moment. Selfishness crops up all the time, doesn't it? Wanting to be somebody because of what one is doing. But what we just talked about, the self wanting to get something for what it is doing. So, can I sit down and not have any motive? I don't know. I don't know where this is the question that comes up. Can one sit or do anything? But right now we're sitting. And be so completely open to everything that happens this moment, to everything that comes up, into awareness. Not in order to get something out of it. That's our conditioned thinking. But just because it's there. It's something completely different from what we're doing all the time. Do you see that? To break this pattern just by sitting down and wondering what is going on, even if it brings no reward, no result, no promises are made. Just to sit and find out all the motives, how they drive one, how when they're not there, it becomes so empty. And to sit with this emptiness, if it's there. The fear that is waiting in there, it seems. The fear of not being anybody, not having a direction to go into. We can dream up a direction immediately, but that's the action of thinking. Can that be spotted as it arises? And again, being with what's there when there is no thought of the direction in which it may take us. To find how the brain is scanning for something to give energy, hope, this whole thing of looking forward to something. To discover all of this in this human mind. To see what drives and propels us every day of our life and night. Just for the sake of discovering it. I think we've all realized that if we work, act, react, think automatically, repetitively, mechanically from our training, we cannot genuinely and fully relate to anybody or anything. It is our conditioning that does that. And so it is with the person with whom we are relating. Two conditionings are relating with each other. From this comes all the pain and conflict and antagonism, strife that is ailing all humankind, wherever there is humankind on this earth. We think we have just recently invented the robot, but a lot of our actions are robot-like, coming from recently or anciently installed programs. This is why we feel so imprisoned, so caught at times, realizing we cannot do what we want to do. We react in a way that we don't want to react. And yet it happens quicker than any kind of intention to do otherwise. One can install new programs of biting one's tongue rather than to come out with a remark. But that's not freedom. That's just program and counter-program. So to aerate all of this, to let it come into the light of day, to see it, how we're responding, reacting in this automatic way, the imprisonment of it, the consequences of it. Maybe once it is in the light of day, this mechanical behavior, it changes on its own. Because attention, awareness, listening is not automatic. It has nothing to do with a mechanical program in the brain. It can shed light on it, but it is not part of it. When it becomes mechanical, I must attend, give me a method to attend better, then it is not attention anymore. Then it is, well, I just said what it was. And we can see it in ourselves. There's a moment of openness, and then how can I keep this going? Or what did I do to bring it on? Let me think of it, and then maybe if I do that again, then this will stay. It's already gone. This is for each one of us to see as clearly as this wooden floor here, or the brown mat. So in sitting down or walking or lying down, can the human mind, as it functions within oneself, as connected with all the emotions, the mind is not separate from the body, from the physical, the tensions, the feelings, the emotions, all linked up with thoughts and memories. Can all of that reveal itself from one moment to the next? You could say, well, what if nothing reveals itself? I'm just sitting there feeling rather dull or numb, as some people put it, feeling numb. What about it? What is numbness? What is dullness? Has one already judged it as a worthless state? Wishing there was more excitement to see that. One is not with this thing if one wants it to be different. One is resisting it. These words are very coarse, but the looking is very fine. Dullness or numbness, if one, drop the word, the label. What is it? Having no attitude toward it at all. Meeting something that one has never met, except through words and reaction and comparison. Seeing that come up and seeing the interference of all this brain work to what is actually there. Numbness, dullness, boredom. And giving it the space of the whole universe to be there. Not as my state, that's another label. Who's the owner of it? The same as the fighter of it, thought. Attention is not numb nor dull. Even though one may experience the state of body and mind as that. But simple awareness that this is so, and not categorizing it, not knowing it. Just what is it? And the listening. Isn't this already the end of dullness and numbness? The dissolving of it, the opening up. Unconditionally, because it may hide something underneath. Fear, anguish, anger. Who knows? It's there to be met. Someone asked, I used to have different practices. I've dropped them. Now the question that comes is, what shall I bring my mind back to if I have no practice? If one makes a statement like this to oneself, if it happens in a meeting, we'll immediately look at the whole, all the assumptions in there and the ideas locked into it. But one can do it for oneself. What shall I bring my mind back to? The assumption being that there is something like an I inside that has control, that can bring the mind, whatever that is, back to, that's the question, to what? Is there an I inside? That can control the mind and bring it back to something that it can decide it wants to bring it back to? Or is this all thought? The I being a thought, a separate thought, separate from mind. That's an idea, it's an assumption that there is me separate from all the processes that are going on. And I can control that. The idea may give one some energy, but if one notices thought train after thought train, one gets very discouraged. What does one mean by bringing something back to something? What was there before? Before there was thought, and now there's thought. What is one looking for as an anchor or as a stable thing to bring the mind to, back to? Back, we already see, is just a way of putting it. There's no back. What was is now memory. What is now, is this already memory? Or at the moment of awareness that one has been drifting, there has been thought train after thought train, at this moment can there be nothing? Nothing to bring the mind back to. Just listening to what's there. One hasn't perceived while the thought trains were running. There was no openness. There was just being on the train, being that train of thought. If one has, as a practice, the repetition of a syllable, then at the moment of awareness that there were thoughts, one will now repeat the syllable or question the syllable. Which is what? Is it anything different? There's the thought, I must do this, the thought of what this will net me, bring me, and the mechanicalness of the repetition. Even if it's awareness of the breathing, it can be a very mechanical thing. I must attend to the breathing. That sort of hangs over the whole activity. I must not be distracted. But distraction reveals itself. There has been thinking, there's a moment of awareness. Where is the breathing? Can one just listen to it? This is not a practice. Breathing is not a practice. Breathing is a natural process. And it takes place in every one of us, every moment. what is it? What is it when I don't know what breathing is up here? I drop all my ideas of practice, of the beneficialness of it, and just listen to something that is occurring naturally, because one may have so manipulated the breathing in one's previous practices to make it regular, to make it deep, to make it abdominal. But that's the first step to see all of the effort and drive that is in the breathing, the controlled breathing. Not trying to uncontrol it or to make it natural. That's one of the worst things one can get into. Trying to make something that is controlled, try to make it natural. How is one going to do that? The very intention is so unnatural. But to see this thing unfold, people mentioning it all the time, when there's really some awareness, all one's drives, physical and mental, pop up and become visible, palpable. And if one doesn't come with a new command, be natural, but just allows all of this to unfold and reveal itself in an awareness which is free from all wanting it to be different, better. And maybe there'll be a natural sigh of relief. See, our problem is we're so concerned, we become so concerned and involved with the objects of our thinking, with what we see, if there is a moment of awareness, and wanting to change that or be different, or having it because it's good. But what is really important and significant is that there is this openness of seeing, not what is seen. Can one see how one enters into the topic, the content, the object, and the awareness is gone? One can't see that until awareness is there again, and realizing how involved one was with what one noticed a moment ago, or 10 minutes ago, or last year. We will end here for today.